When somebody's coming to you presenting a portfolio, like what are the things that you're looking for?
At Lorcana, we need to see somebody who can tell a story in a single image. You want somebody to be immersed in that thing. It's not necessarily the one toy, it's the brand. I got to really grow at Hasbro as well. It's kind of like the second stage of my career as a concept artist. I think that really plays to the nostalgia of Disney in general. And that's something we actually thought a lot about at the beginning of Lorcana.
How did a computer science major lead to art directing for Disney Lorcana? Welcome to the Mo Method, where we talk to creatives who have turned their passions into professions. Today's guest is Matthew Ng, the creative mind at the forefront of Disney Lorcana's trading card game. His story is so much more than just good illustration. It's a masterclass in unexpected pivots, relentless vision, and how every step, even the most unconventional, can build towards that dream career. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and let's jump right in.
Hi, I'm Matthew Ng. I'm currently serving as the lead art director for the illustration for Disney Lorcana TCG. I come from animation and video games. Have worked in toys and board games as well as both a concept artist, visual development, and art director. So I've worked in a variety of different entertainment industries, but not film or TV, and I have a love for that industry as well. But yeah, that's my background.
So let's start from the beginning. So what was like sort of the first thing that in art and design that kind of made you realize like this is something that you wanted to pursue as a career?
Well, what's funny is I don't know if a lot of artists go through this, and maybe it was more like my generation before art really became a bigger industry, a better known industry. When I was in high school, before the internet was a thing, I was just drawing from comic books, and I really loved comic books. So I was doing that more for entertainment, drawing for entertainment, partly because I was bored in school and stuff, but I never thought that I would want to do it for work, especially once I found out that comic book artists didn't really get paid as much as I thought they should, and it was a lot of hard work and stuff, and I was like, oh, I don't know if that's for me. So I didn't even think about art as a career until I was actually in college, because I started college as a computer science major, and I was thinking, well, I really like video games. Maybe I'll be a programmer or something, right?
Yeah.
And then I quickly discovered that I could not be a programmer. So I was like, well, what can I do with art, like an art adjacent career? I was like, I'm still not gonna be a comic book artist. I'm not gonna sit there and draw like for a job. I don't think that's actually a job. And so I was looking in a lot of different places. But again, the internet was brand new at the time. They didn't have a lot of resources and stuff. It was mostly emails and stuff and some random web pages. So a lot of my research was done, old school, these like binders of here's some possible careers you could do, and just finding something that was art adjacent. And I thought about architecture, and I thought about even graphic design and things like that. But then I settled on actually, found out about industrial design as a career, and I thought that would be really cool because I liked a lot of things. I liked shoes and soft goods and stuff, and so I changed my major immediately from well, I also saw that they only required like the minimum amount of math for your major, so I was like, okay, I got that done already. I'm going to switch over to this. I'm not going to have to take math again. I was like, perfect. Yeah, exactly. So I did that, and what was interesting was that the industrial design program at the school I went to, which was Brigham Young University in Utah, also at the time was where the computer animation program was, because they had computers, they had labs, and they had art, although it was actually in the School of Engineering. So when I was there, I was like, wow, this is actually, and I found out like, hey, this is, people are going here for 3D animation. I was like, well, that's really like a thing. Like it didn't even occur to me.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that industry. I didn't know anything about how those films were made. I didn't even consider it as a career, but I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to look into this. And so I took some 3D animation courses there, and I loved it, of course, and kept with it. And so at that point, I think is when I decided, you know what, this is actually a career I could do in art, and pursue it.
Nice. So were there any like kind of pivotal moments that you were like, oh, like I'm kind of on the right path? Like when you started kind of getting your hands dirty with the actual like animation and
I mean, I think that I've always loved computers and using computers, so like it was pretty, I don't want to say easy, because learning a 3D package out of with no background is not that easy.
right,
Well, it's a little easier now with YouTube where you can find out a lot of stuff. But again,
right,
this was like right at this birth of the internet. There was no YouTube. We were
yeah,
pouring through manuals. It wasn't easy, but I enjoyed it. And I think that for anybody that has done animation or 3D work, there's a big reward when you're done and you see what you've created, and seeing other people appreciate what you made. That's kind of what all artists strive for, right? All creatives love to see their work appreciated by somebody who understands it. So that, like, I don't know, I guess it was probably like one of the first big projects we had, and just like sitting there with a group of my classmates and enjoying each other's work, like that really felt good, and kind of helped reinforce my my decision to go down that path too. And I was like, yeah, this is good. I'm going to keep doing it.
nice. And so after school, how'd you kind of break into the workforce? What was your first gig?
Oh, this is a great story because I was actually once again in the computer lab trying to figure out how to use Maya late at night. It was probably like 8 or 8:30 at night, and I was in the back because there was another class, like a night class, happening, but they didn't take up the whole computer lab. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna sit quietly in the back here and work on my own stuff. And then I heard the instructor, who was an adjunct instructor, mention that they were hiring. And I
Oh,
like
nice.
looked over my computer monitor. I'm like, what's going on? And I applied and I got this job. It was a funny job because it wasn't even doing computer animation, but it was creating some digital scrapbooking artwork. And I was like, okay, because it was at this company that also did 3D art for as a external contractor for Microsoft and for all these other video game places, and this was like one of their side projects. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this and just kind of be around, like, around this place, and maybe they'll teach me some stuff. And it was really funny because video games worked a lot differently than film back in those days. And so I didn't our program was focused on film, so I didn't actually know a lot of the things they were doing in video games, because our teachers, at the time, this is back in the day that we were learning, we were doing everything with NURBS and like these crazy like things that video games just didn't even mess with. So I went to this job and I made like paper doll stuff in Flash for like months, and then finally they were like, what was funny is it was like in the basement of like their office, and so I would have to like go out these doors and then up to another room where everyone else was. It was like me and one other person, like just in this basement, like me, making this little
Like
this
locked
little,
in the basement.
yeah,
They're
it was
like,
like
you
this
guys
little
are...
dirt. It was like this little like cast off like project, and then so I would go up and like, hey guys, what's going on, in like the main studio, and like kind of get to know them, become friends with them and stuff. And then I knew they would reach a point, but I was like, if you ever need some help, like I'm available. And so they finally needed some help, and I drew lines on a texture map for a flying game called Crimson Skies,
Uh-huh.
which you might have heard of. It was kind of a big franchise, but they like taught me how to texture, because NURBS and polygon texturing was totally different at the time. So they taught me a lot, and I was in school. Like this was the last, I think, year and a half of school. So they taught me a lot there, and I actually got to build up my portfolio. I started doing more and more of the 3D work and helping with texturing and creating some models and stuff I mean, these are like PS1 games, PS2 games.
Yeah.
And so I had a portfolio when I graduated for games. Um, Specifically, most of my portfolio was around vehicles. So I got a job right out of school at a studio in LA, that's, I believe, no longer around, sadly. But they were a small studio called Spark Unlimited, and they did. It was a bunch of people that left. Let's see, they left. What company was it? I can't remember the company name, but they made Medal of Honor and then left.
Mhm.
And so I got to work on the vehicles and stuff for Call of Duty.
Oh, nice.
The first one that came out on PS2, and yeah, it was interesting. it was interesting. I learned a lot there, but that was like my first break into the industry, and it was all because I was able to, learn some stuff on the job at this other place while I was a student. So I'm extremely lucky and grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you kind of started your career more in 3D, and so like you were
Yeah.
doing 2D, and then you kind of started in 3D. So was most of your beginning like you started there, and then you continued in 3D, or at what point did you kind of pivot into 2D?
Um, that's a good question. So I really, I mean, my whole um, like studying animation and stuff and computer graphics, I was in 3D, and then in video games. So at this job out of school, it was a video game studio, and then after a couple of years after we launched that game, there was a lot of trouble on the next starting the next project and stuff, and I needed more stability. So I went to EA Sports, which is another video game place out in Florida, and um, after a couple years, I was like, I just wasn't happy as a 3D artist. Um, I felt like I wasn't being very creatively rewarded. I just didn't feel very happy with what I was doing as a career. And I was, again, really lucky to be in the right place at the right time. I tell a lot of my students, like, a lot of getting to where you are or getting into something that you want to do is about working hard and being prepared. And then those opportunities, when they come up, you're just ready to jump on them. And I was lucky enough where I was um, active in my art community at EA Sports Studio, and because I was bored, honestly, and I just like to be a little more social. So we had some clubs there that one of them was uh, I think it was called the Art Gallery Club, but there was a hallway that we would hang shows up, and I saw one of them, and I was like, oh, that's a thing. Like I can be involved in this. That's cool. Let's just do that and get to know some more people around the studio because that office was huge. It was like over 600 people or so.
Oh wow.
So there's a lot of people I didn't know, and I was like, I just want to get to know people. Um, so I participated in that for a while, and then my one of my friends there was like, well, they posted an internal job. They're like, hey, this new position is open. We want people at the studio to apply for it if you're interested. And it was for a like junior concept artist position. And as you're probably familiar with, concept art is more in the realm of drawing and painting, and not so much like 3D work, right? At the time, I mean, it's good to know 3D work, but a
Yeah.
lot of it is focused on traditional stuff. So I was like, well, um, I don't know. I had actually posted a few pieces in this art gallery, being part of the committee and stuff. We were always looking for artwork, and I was like, this is a good place to kind of put my stuff out there. So I'd done that, and then a couple of the people that I was working with in the art gallery were like, did you apply for this position? And I was like, no, like I don't have any concept art experience, like
Yeah.
I don't know. And then come to find out that my friend Tommy Jacob, who shout out to Tommy, was like, he was on the art gallery committee, and he was like, you should really apply. And the deadline was like the next day. And I was like, oh, well, I don't even have like a concept art portfolio. Like, what am I gonna? I'm gonna show like 3D models and texture,
Right.
like textures I painted. Like, it's not that great for that kind of job. Um, I didn't realize at the time, but like that's like junior concept artists usually don't have a huge portfolio, right? Because they're pretty new.
Right.
They just need to show solid work, right? And so I did. Tommy was like, just go like find a photo plate and just paint on top of it to like do a concept. And so that's what I did. Like literally that night, I went home. I spent like a little bit of time finding something, coming up with an idea, and then I painted on it. And um, I ended up getting the job. I was super grateful. There were a lot of really talented people trying to get the job. I don't know why I got it specifically, but my hiring manager was Tommy Jacob, and he was like, "Yeah, you should do this." And so I did it, and then I met the rest of the team. I interviewed with all of them. I learned a ton after I became a concept artist at EA Sports, um, which is interesting because again, it's a sports simulation place, so there's not as much like character design work and things like
Right.
that necessarily, but a lot of visual development for color and
Mm.
story goes into those games. And once I made that transition from 3D artist into concept artist there, um, it was like night and day. I felt much more creatively rewarded. I was learning a ton. I was learning a lot from a lot of ex-Disney Animation people that were there because, again, this is Orlando, and Disney Animation had closed their studio there, and a lot of people just kind of moved over into EA Sports to use their skills there. But
Uh-huh.
that was how I made the transition into more visual development.
And you enjoy the visual development more so than the 3D modeling and texturing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I now have this like really, uh, I guess, affinity for color and design.
Mm.
I worked on mostly, and I was a visual development artist there for about 7 years. I was there for 9 years total. Um, and a lot of what we did was color and lighting targets. Sometimes some like time of day or set design stuff. And so I really enjoyed that stuff. Just being able to use more of my design sense rather than like technical
Mm.
computer graphics stuff. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to circle back to something that you kind of touched upon. You said you tell your students, the two things is working hard, which obviously, that's self-explanatory. But when you say be prepared, like, can you kind of go into that a little bit more? How could one kind of be prepared for opportunities that come their way?
Oh, that's a great question because like a lot of times artists are just kind of heads down doing stuff, right? They're like, oh, this is what I'm working on now. This is what I'm working on then, and then their portfolio just kind of becomes that stuff, right? Um, Sometimes I wish I was this driven, but sometimes people have a good idea of what they want to do and where they want to be. And I tell them like, look, you're not going to probably not going to get that dream job right at the start of your career. But if you create work that and learn from people who are doing that job and create work that looks like you could be doing that job, that's what needs to be in your portfolio. You never show, or you shouldn't show stuff in your portfolio that isn't stuff that you want to keep doing, right?
Mm.
You want to show work that you want to be getting. So it might not be your current job work, or when you're a student, you don't really have much choice, and it's like your student work because you don't have much time for other things. But I, I, I tell people like if you're not doing that thing that you want to be doing, you have to do it on your spare time to build your portfolio. And then when you can show somebody when you're applying for that job, that dream job that you want, or somebody tells you like, hey, this place is hiring, you've got it ready to go. You need to show that you can do what that person needs for that job. Um, so being prepared isn't necessarily like, yeah, you should always be working on your art skills and whatnot, but if you know what you want to be doing, then you need to be directing your efforts to grow in that area. So,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then when you meet that person at a convention or at a show or at a workshop, you can be like, "Oh, you work at so and so place. I've always wanted to work there. This is my stuff. Like, would you mind just even critiquing it or whatever?" And you get to know those people, and you're already prepared for that moment because
Mm.
you've been working on it already. That's kind of what
Yeah.
I mean. A lot of it's
Yeah.
personal projects, really.
Yeah. So on that note, like, how do you kind of, for you personally and for other people, how do you kind of strike that balance between doing professional work and doing the work for and the personal projects?
Yeah, that's really tough actually because sometimes, work takes a lot of your time and it might not be the thing that you want to be doing or it might not be the thing that's really helping your portfolio that much. So I think you do it really is a balance because on one hand you need a job, you need to be able to, pay for your living expenses and all of that stuff to survive. But at the end of the day, if it's not what you ultimately want to be doing, you need to make sure that you're carving out some of your time to work on what it is that you want to be doing. Like, for example, if you're super into stop motion animation, then you should be spending time making, and you want to be doing that for a career, then you should be spending some time doing that, even if that's not your current job, right? It is tough. It's a lot of hours, but sometimes if I mean, I guess stop motion wasn't a great example because that's a very niche thing, and it's totally like it's pretty separate from like doing concept art and stuff. But if you want to be working on video games but you're not in the video game industry yet, designing a game or even just concepting out the story or characters for an idea that you have on your spare time at night is going to build your portfolio in the right direction versus like if you're working on I don't know, if you're working like as a web designer or something and you're having to put together corporate-y stuff for websites and stuff, like that's not really going to grow your portfolio in the way that you want, right? So you have to spend more spare time. But if you're in a little bit more of an adjacent field, or if you're freelancing, I would look for those jobs that will get you closer to where you want to be.
Yeah.
I know some really great artists who will take jobs that just to boost their portfolio and do it in such a way where it's like, hey, this I'm going to do this, but it's also like kind of selfish because it's like I'm going to do this to make my portfolio better, and so I'm going to do something that I know is going to make my portfolio better and hopefully meet the goals of the client.
Right.
But you always got to be thinking with that mindset of like self growth and what can I get out of doing this job versus
Right.
like I'm just dumping all my time into this job but not getting any benefit or career growth from it.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of expounding on that a little bit, like, so then let's say a person's doing a job, whether it be something that's directly kind of helping build their portfolio, or even if it's not, but they're doing their own personal projects on the side. How does one go about kind of getting critical feedback from people who can kind of help them in, finding that position that they want to be working in?
Yeah, that is tough. But I would say that a lot of that can come through being at industry events. So, like I'm sure you experienced at Lightbox, you get to see and talk to people that you normally wouldn't have access to, right? They can review your portfolios. You could even just, spontaneously meet somebody in the hallway that's talking to your friend or whatever, right? Like you can have those kind of really casual connections at industry events, and I would say even more so at something that's like a workshop or a little more focused on learning and growth, right? Because people are there to share, people are there to talk. So I would say attending that industry events are the best way to do that. Sometimes if there's an artist you admire and they're going to be at a convention, you could go and talk to them. It's a little bit of a different situation though, because usually artists are there trying to sell stuff and make money, so you shouldn't take a lot of their time. Be very courteous, and maybe even just take a business card or get their email and say, would you mind if I like reached out to you and just like got some feedback on stuff. A lot of artists are really really nice and looking to help artists that are looking to grow too, because I think every artist is in that point at a certain point in their career have felt like that. So
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. So kind of going back to your career, so you start off, so we say you start in the 3D and then you move to the EA Sports, doing moving to the 2D. So now going from kind of that position as, kind of a beginner concept artist to more of a director position, how do you find the differences in terms of your kind of workflow? Obviously, now you're more managerial and dealing with other artists, but can you kind of talk about the differences between, kind of starting out versus leading teams?
Yeah, there's a huge difference between being a concept artist or visual development artist and then going into art direction. And that difference is, like you mentioned, the work that you do. Most of art direction is evaluation and review and advice. You're not doing the painting, you're not doing the drawing. You're helping an artist do their best work and also meet the needs of the project. So a lot of it is more, I guess, people-oriented while using, critical thinking and problem solving for visuals and for directive for the project. So a lot of it has to do with, and we've seen this a lot with new art directors, is learning to let go of making art.
Mm.
It can be tough because, especially for any art director who was an artist, you just want to. Sometimes you go, well, it'd just be faster if I just made this little adjustment here and painted this here, and it's a yes. Sometimes that can help, but it's a very slippery slope. And um, I think what's funny on in particular on Lorcana, like there's so many pieces that we go through that as an art director you just can't. You don't have the time to be able to do that kind of thing. So you have to rely on your resources, which are freelance artists and other artists that are working on the artwork itself, to make those changes to help you figure out things um, while giving overall direction, like this character needs adjustment or this isn't reading clearly and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's more of like being able to um, effectively communicate the direction and issues that you're seeing with artwork versus doing the actual artwork itself.
Yeah. Do you ever miss doing the actual artwork, like kind of getting your hands
Oh
on the
yeah, all the
projects?
time, all the time.
Yeah.
I need speaking of personal projects, like I need to pick up and do some more painting because I'm feeling that right now. But I think that's actually, like I mentioned before, it's something that's I think super important for any creative to get to feel that sense of satisfaction is to do work for yourself, your own personal
Yeah.
projects on your own time.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to kind of, Shane Olson was talking about, you kind of have like your creative bucket and your work bucket. And like, as an artist, you kind of have to fill that personal bucket of like that sort of, no matter how much you're doing with work, if you're not kind of getting that personal fulfillment and like scratching that itch, that kind of builds up and you
Yeah, for
gotta,
sure.
yeah, because like that's why we got into it in the first place. Is because we love creating. So
Yeah, and sometimes if you're really lucky, like your personal work and your professional work can bleed over, and then you
right,
can get to work on some stuff professionally that is like super, super satisfying. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I'm kind of curious, like with Lorcana, just to talk about that for 1 second. What's kind of the overall like general vibe would you say that Lorcana kind of goes for?
Well, you mean like the art style and
Yeah, because
things
like
like that?
I remember at Lightbox, Mel was kind of talking about it a bit, and because you guys obviously kind of you have to keep true to the characters. You can't kind of go too crazy in terms of making them far from the source material, but there is definitely some creative freedom there. So what's kind of the like the general idea of like what the characters are going for?
Well, I can't talk about too many specific characters, but I will say that we early on we established what we call our house style, which is the
Mm.
art style for Lorcana, the main art style, and it's somewhat broad, but we call it modern storybook, and the reason we call it that is because it brings an aesthetic and a vibe of hand drawn storybook kind of illustration.
Hmm.
It is all digital. It's not, like pencils and things like that, but it's meant to evoke that same feeling though.
Mm.
And I think that really plays to the nostalgia of just Disney in general.
Yeah.
Um, it also is, I think, super comfortable for people to see characters that they know and love in that kind of art style. Um, and so we're always trying to create things that appeal to that nostalgia while while also being new. So it's like, oh,
Hmm.
this is familiar, this is comfortable, I love this. But also there's something special and different about it than maybe something you might have seen before. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the vibe that we're always going for.
Cool. That's really cool. So I'm just curious, like, just for you personally, what's kind of your relationship with traditional versus digital tools? Obviously, everything's done digitally now, and that's like what everyone's using. But I'm just asking, like, for you, on a personal note, like, do you
Yeah,
have a
no, that's a good
preference?
question. That's a good question because, like you said, like almost all art being done for projects now is digital, and I think that's great. I love digital art, but at the same time, when I'm uh, sitting in front of a computer all day for work, I don't want to sit in front of a computer for fun very
Right.
much anymore. So, I mean, I do have an iPad, and so I'll do digital art on that. But one thing I mentioned picking up painting, and a couple years ago now, well, it's been a little while, I picked up gouache, and I really enjoyed just getting back to traditional painting and traditional artwork. Um, Not that I had really done a lot of it before. Like I said, in college, I was doing computer graphics, and so I actually kind of wish that I had pursued illustration more because I would have liked to have learned some of that stuff in college, but I'm learning it now thanks to YouTube and friends. Like I can, fortunately ask a lot of artist friends like how would you do this or whatever. But I want to paint in gouache. I think it's super fun. It's really easy to work with on location in plein air as well. So that's what I want to do is do some more gouache painting, and that is mostly landscapes and still lifes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember seeing a lot of gouache artists at Lightbox, and from what I understand with gouache, it's like it dries very quickly, so it's like it's not so forgiving. That's my understanding.
It actually is super forgiving because even though it dries really fast, you can reactivate it with water.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so like acrylic, when it dries, you're done. Like that, you just have to paint over it, right? But gouache you can reactivate with water, and so it's really interesting like that, and that's why I like it. But it's not quite as messy or has all of the things that come with oil painting, which get a little crazy sometimes.
Right, oil's kind of like a whole other.
Oh yeah, yeah. I tried oil painting too, and I was like, no, I need proper training in this because I can't just figure it out. It's pretty tough.
Yeah. Do you find like your digital background helps with the traditional mediums?
Only in the sense that I, have also trained my sense of color and design. Because as you know, I'm sure like painting traditionally is totally different than just like doing adjustments or color adjustments in Photoshop. Like it's not the same thing. It's totally different because we're working with pigment versus light. So I think that my just painting in general, and since most of my painting has been digitally, I guess you could say it has contributed to it, but it really is just developing from a more developed sense of color theory, color taste, and aesthetic and understanding that has helped me transfer that into traditional painting.
Yeah. Because the foundations don't change from one to the other.
Yeah, like I know what color I need, but now I get there a different way with traditionally versus digitally.
Right, and there's no undo with traditional.
I actually love that. I used to when I did even more traditional stuff, it was more like drawing in a sketchbook, and I love drawing in ink. So I love that, but it is like totally different. Like I'm like, okay, slow down a little bit and not just like randomly put stuff down because I know I'm not gonna be able to undo it or whatever. That's a interesting. Interesting difference.
Did you ever try any of like the Inktober things? I know there was like I think on Procreate.
I love Inktober, and I always tried to, but I know I'm like I'll do like maybe 5, and then I'm just gone, and I can't keep up like every day. Yeah, that's tough.
It was definitely a big commitment.
It is, and I haven't been organized enough to really be able to do it.
Yeah. So how do you like experiment with new techniques? What's kind of your approach?
I don't really do a lot of experimenting with new techniques. I would say picking up gouache was like a big deal, and that was like the newest thing I've done in many years. Besides that disaster with oil painting, but like that because. Like I said, I studied digital stuff, so anything I do traditionally is like picking up a new thing. And I actually have a whole set of miniature painting paints in my shelf back there that I haven't opened, and it's
like
been like
Warhammer
a year.
Style.
Yeah. I've got like I really want to get into miniature painting, but I don't know. I'm lazy and I haven't really like actually done it yet.
It's really cool. The miniature painting stuff is really, really cool. Like I follow a bunch of people on Instagram. Yeah, and just like it's so cool to see, like especially the way that some of them, the really good ones, the way that they get some like certain details. Like I love.
And it has like a different technique than you would like normally do on like other paintings. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's fun.
Yeah, like I've seen like people who do like I always find it fascinating when people have kind of like light effects. But it's all paint, It's just like
I
saw one with a guy smoking a cigar and they like illuminated the face, and it looks so cool. And you watch them work, and it's mesmerizing. And it's such a small scale too. It's fascinating.
I think that's partly why it appeals to me because it's like, oh, this is little miniatures. Like,
Yeah.
sure you can spend time on them, but you can put them down and pick them up, and then like
Yeah.
it's not too long before they're done.
Right. Right.
I'm not painting
Well,
a whole like Warhammer regiment or something though.
yeah. No, there are people. I mean, there are people who do it, and it's. I don't know, it's another level of commitment, especially when you do it as a hobby. That's another
Yeah.
level of commitment.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. So we kind of jumped from the beginning of your career to where you are now. So what were kind of the steps in between of like from EA to where you are now?
I think a lot of it was, well, like I mentioned, a lot of it was me learning more about artwork in general and what it meant to be an artist, because of my background, being in computer graphics versus like, um, so quite so much drawing and painting that I got to be able to do as a concept artist. So once I started as a concept artist, that kind of like was almost like a rebirth of my career, and I felt to some degree that I was like starting over, which wasn't a
Mm.
terrible thing because it was a couple years into my career, so it wasn't too far in. But I learned a ton from the people I worked with there, and I also learned about myself, and I think that's one of the things that um, is really important to any artist's growth, and that learning can happen early, and I just wasn't mature enough to actually have done it already.
Mm.
And that is like, what are my strengths? What do I like doing? What do I not like doing? For a career, like where can I go? And that's really like a harsh sometimes self-assessment of like where can I grow as a career, and also like what am I interested in? Um, and what was funny was maybe I can't remember how long, but I had been a concept artist for a little while, and I was asked like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I really want to. I think one of my strengths is character art. And I don't know why I said that really. I think it's because every artist kind of secretly wants to be a good character artist, but not every artist should be a character artist, and not everybody's good at that. And I don't think I really was. Like, I can draw and I can do like character work, but I don't know that I'm really like a character designer, like,
Hmm.
or character artist. And I think I said that because I felt like I was really good at figure drawing and all that stuff, and I could render that stuff. But after a little while, I was like, you know what? I don't think I like characters as much as landscapes.
Uh-huh.
And it took a while to like really learn that about myself and give up that pride of being like, I want to be a good artist, and a character artist means I'm a good artist or whatever. I don't
Mm.
think it does, because there's plenty of artists who are like, I'm scared of doing environments. I just don't want to do environments, and they just do
Right.
characters, and that's fine too. But it took me a little while to realize that about myself, and so now um, while I can do character work, I know that I prefer landscapes and environments and lighting scenes, and that's really
Mm.
like what really I really enjoy. That plus like stylizing inanimate objects. I really get a kick out of
Oh,
like
cool.
making props that feel really character heavy while not being
Yeah.
a character. That's just something I enjoy doing.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I was one of the few people who are like specialized in environment design and environment art, and it's definitely a skill set that you don't come across as often, but it's super critical, especially if you're dealing with kind of like a setting like a game, let's say, because as important as the characters are to the story and to the narrative, the environment in some ways is even more important to the narrative, right? Because that's kind of where everything takes place within.
Yeah, it's the
And
stage, right?
yeah, and that's where you really get the information of what's going on in the story. Whether you're in a fantasy setting or a sci-fi or a dystopian, or like all those things really come from the environment more so than the
Yeah,
characters.
and the lighting, right? Like the lighting is so
Yeah,
so important for story, and I just love that stuff.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So again, so you started working in environment design professionally. Is that kind of where your career
Yeah, I
took
mean,
you?
so I think I mentioned it, but like at EA Sports, it's a sports simulation place, so a lot of the characters are the athletes or whatever. So there
Yeah.
wasn't like a lot of character design per se on most of our projects. We did do some that weren't sports games. I worked on a small NDS game called Henry Hatsworth, which was really funny,
Uh huh.
and I got to do some illustrations for that. And but by, you know, most of our work at that time at that studio was lighting targets and setting up some of the environments. So I did a lot of concept work around what these places should look like and what kind of lighting should be there and things like that. Some time of day stuff and weather things like this
Mm-hmm.
is what it could look like. And a lot of times we're not, um, we're enhancing realism. So it's meant to like feel real, but also be like more than real. So
Uh-huh.
we were doing a lot of studying of different kinds of daytime lighting and nighttime stuff and things like that, and just putting those ideas into visuals. Um, but once I left EA, I went to Hasbro for almost 5 years, and I knew that I had a very versatile skill set, having
Mm-hmm.
worked on a lot of this a lot of this lighting and environment stuff, and some character work. And then at Hasbro, I was able to work on more character work, and we worked on one of the reasons why I made that switch was it was super appealing that the team I joined at Hasbro because we got to work on every property that has came through Hasbro almost.
Uh-huh. What kind of
So I got
stuff were
to
you doing?
oh well the first week I was there before I even got a computer. My boss was like, "Hey, can you help do some drawing for this Iron Man toy concept, like how it comes apart and where the tech goes and stuff in it?" And I was like, "Okay, I don't have a computer or a tablet," and so I literally got like 11 by 17 paper and a pencil, and I was like drawing out, Iron Man. And then I cut out different pieces of this toy and then like made an exploded view and went to the Xerox machine and like copied it over and like did all this stuff. And that was super fun. But like, I got to really grow at Hasbro as well. It's kind of like the second stage of my career, I think, as a concept artist because of all
Mm-hmm.
the variety I got to do there and the different styles and genres that I got to work on as well. Um, so that was really enjoyable to me to be able to get to work on all of those different properties.
Mm. So let me ask you, like working in video games and toys, and now card games. What's kind of the similarities and differences in because they all obviously share the same basic skill set, right?
Yeah.
But what are some of the differences in terms of how you approach projects and how you work on projects and all
Well,
the
yeah, that's a good question. I want to start with what's similar first, because as different as these different things as these different end products are, they're all entertainment, right? And
right?
they're all an expression of a brand. I think when you boil it down to that, that's everything you do, right? Is an expression of a brand, of a story, of a thing that you're making. Um, and I think that's really important, and that's something we actually thought a lot about at the beginning of Lorcana. Like, we're not building just a game. It's more than that. It's a world, it's a realm, it's got all these different things going on in it. There's lots of world building that we do. But like when you're making these things, a video game or a toy or a card game, I personally believe that if you put the work into the um, I guess you could call it the ecosystem to some degree, which is a little bit, I think that reduces it a little bit. But basically, it's like the world that these things live in,
Hmm.
and you're welcoming your audience into that world to play with this thing that you made or to experience this thing that you made. Um, and when they do that, the goal is to have them immersed in this world, right? The goal is to have them feel like they're in that world when they're doing that thing. They're playing that video game, or they're playing with that toy, or they're playing that card game. That's always the goal with all of these products. So I think that when you realize that really there's not a lot of difference in how you develop the higher brand level things. The difference is just in how it's executed, right? So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, this is going to be told differently because it's in a card game, or we have different marketing campaigns with a toy or a video game that we're able to get the world across in these different ways. So it really comes down to just the execution. So making sure that you have people that specialize in the end product at that point. But at the beginning, it's all the same goal. We're just trying to get people
Hmm.
excited about this thing that we're making. So we develop the world and the play pattern, or the way that somebody experiences this thing.
Yeah.
so that they can feel like they're part of it.
Yeah, but also like the immersion is very different from a video game to a toy to a theme park to a
Right.
movie, right? They're all very different. They're varying degrees of immersion, So how much does the immersion affect the design and the artwork?
So we need to communicate different things in different ways because of that different type of immersion, right? In a video game, you're kind of plopped down in front of a screen. You see a lot. You see everything that comes across the screen in whatever order um, the game maker has it come across your screen, right?
Right.
Or as you're playing the game. So it's very controlled environment. Um, a toy is less so, right? It's like, well, we don't know what you're going to do with this toy. Maybe there can be some things that you might do with it, but it's really open-ended.
Right.
So a lot of that immersion comes through in on a toy in the packaging,
Mm.
and obviously on the marketing or any kind of ads that are placed for it to show like what that toy can be, what you can do with that toy, or what it's
Yeah.
meant for.
Yeah.
Um, there are some toys that are connected to video games and stuff like that, and they have a higher, a more um, broad expression of that brand. Like, I actually worked on a Transformers toy, but like Transformers also has, all the movies and the TV and,
Right.
and all of
Right.
the comic books and all these other things, right? So
Right.
when I say like you want somebody to be immersed in that thing, that's what I'm talking about. It's not necessarily the one toy. It's the brand and what that brand brings. Same thing with like a Marvel toy. If you've seen Marvel movies and you're like, oh, I really love this character, when you're playing with that character, you're thinking of the movie too, and so
Yeah.
it all
Yeah.
works together.
Yeah.
It's a whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
With card games, it's totally different too because especially in a card game where all the cards are random in packs, you don't know what order people are going to open things in, so you can't
Hmm.
dictate a story like you could in a video game with a, opening sequence or something like that, where it's
Right.
very much like a film, and you're like, we know they're going to see this, and this is how they're going to experience it. Card games are totally different, so we have to kind of be a little bit more careful about how we communicate those things and tell the story, but a lot more of that will come through in marketing and other areas where we can tell that story and have people experience it how we
Yeah.
um, how we give it out to them.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how much in not just card games, but kind of board games in general. Like we're going back to miniatures, like with the Warhammer and these different games, how there's not even that much information in the actual product itself, but it's all this like lore that's built around it that the fans are immersed in, and or
Well, that's one of the great things about D&D, right? Like I
yeah.
think and I actually haven't played Warhammer, although I'm secretly hoping someone will teach me sometime. Um, is like it's these games. That's what I love about these. I mean, I guess some of the more complex board games do this, but like when you're playing a game, it becomes its own story. And even though
Right.
it's surrounded by these trappings of maybe it is a Transformers game or a Warhammer game, and there's this lore of the world or whatever that's that and that your friends that are playing with when you're playing it with your friends, you are forming a new story, and that game becomes its own story. And that's one of the great things about board games and role-playing games.
Yeah, that's very true. Right, because it's not so much at that point. It's not so much about the story as much as it is the experience.
Right.
It's similar but
I
different.
mean, you even get it like when you're playing like team, PC shooters or whatever together, and
Right,
you're like, oh, do you remember when you like headshotted that guy? Like we were
right,
down to the wire and you saved us by doing, like those become
yeah,
stories as well. Like
yeah. Even though they're not
that.
part of the campaign mode, if you will.
Right,
But
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
That's one of the
very well
great things
said.
about games.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. No, but you see it with other like obviously a big examples like Pokemon, right? Like it started as a trading card game, and it's become a whole ecosystem in and of itself of it became shows and toys, and it became a whole there's a whole world built around it because of it's more than just the actual cards. There's something else to it. Yeah.
Yep.
So let me ask you, so in your opinion, like what makes a good design and a good, or good art, if you want to be more broad?
Oh, that's a that's a big question. What makes good art?
Well,
Uh,
let's say good design. Good design to be
good design.
a
Okay,
little more
so
specific.
once you say design, that immediately is in my brain at least linking that design to a purpose, right?
Mm.
So to me, when we talk about what makes good design, that means you're meeting a goal. Um, and so good design is design that accomplishes the goal of what you set out to do, whether that be something as corporate as like I don't know, but like if it's like an ad for medicine or something, and it's like showing what it needs to show. Like any good design is a design that accomplishes the goal that you need.
Mm.
We have different goals at different times with different pieces, so it's tough to say like what is a good like maybe more appealing or whatever, like that's different. But a good design just achieves that goal. It answers the question, it solves a problem, it achieves what it needs to do with that design.
Yeah. So again, like as a in the director sort of position, when somebody's coming to you presenting, a portfolio, like what are the things that you're looking for to see that they're a good designer?
Um, so there's a couple things like right now at Lorcana, it's when we're looking at card artists, we need to see somebody who can tell a story in a single image, right? Because that's what a card does. And it conveys a lot of information in a single image. So visual storytelling is super important, and that comes through, I'm sure, as you know, in lots of different ways. It's lighting, cinematography, pose, expression, emotion on the character's face. All of those things are super important. And then we might have like, certain things that we want to communicate from the set's theme and narrative. Like, all right, this person is running away because they just did this to this other character or whatever.
Hmm.
You got to show that as well as all of the other stuff. And on a
Right.
trading card game, it's actually more important to show what that card does. Like, okay, this is a really big card with big stats. It needs to feel formidable and
Hmm.
strong. So like there's tons of different things that need to be factored into that. So when we're looking at portfolios, mainly I'm looking at if they're a good visual storyteller, and then also if they can draw, because we obviously work with
Right.
Disney characters, if they can draw Disney characters or not.
Yeah. All right, cool. I know you have a heart out, so just one last question, then we can wrap it up.
Sure, I got a few minutes.
And this is a question I try to pose to all my guests, and that is, what's your definition of success?
Oh man, you know, early on, anybody just wants to be like recognized for good work, I think. I think success for me at this point in my career is, I've been fortunate to already experience this, but it is, like I said before, seeing other people enjoy the things that I'm making.
Hmm.
Um, that to me is success. Like, yeah, we want our, business goals to be met, and we want to have a job and all of that stuff, and we want everybody always, wants to be rewarded for those things. But also, like for me, the biggest success is really meeting fans and seeing um, the enjoyment that the things that I've made have brought to their lives, and it's also brought a lot of things to my life as well. So that to me is success. Money always comes after that. I think if you're always money first, that's not really what success is, because it's not really what's going to bring you gratification or happiness as much as it is just being proud of what you made and knowing that it has enriched the lives of others. And I think that is really the definition of success for me.
Awesome. That's a really good answer. If you still have a couple more minutes, just like squeeze in one more
Yeah, go for
question.
it. Yeah.
All right, cool. And that's just what are some like skills and things that you think people who are kind of starting out and getting into the industry now, what are some skills that the future creators you think are going to be really crucial for the next 5 to 10 years, let's say?
Um, that's a good question, because I'm sure there's going to be tools that I can't even think about that would be great. But if we're talking about just artwork, it doesn't really change that much. It's like, you know, learn how to draw, learn how to learn cinematography. I think a lot of people skim over cinematography,
Mm.
um, but it involves so much. How to tell a story, and just with what I'm working on right now with Lorcana, like like I said, a single image shot of like how do you convey something in one single image and a lot of things in one single image, and learn how to simplify and be intentional with your work. I think that a lot of artists obviously need to study and get spend a lot of time and continuously study figure drawing and things like that. And those are great things to keep studying. That's things I need to keep studying as well. But I think that's something that's like a given. It's like, yeah, always work on those things. But one of the things that I see falling more by the wayside is that color and cinematography and lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want to tell a story, that's super important. And even like visual development artists, because a lot of times you want to, maybe you're not polishing something, but you're also trying to convey those things in a very concise and quick manner. And the more you know it, the more masterful you are at doing it, the quicker you can do it, right? So then you can put down a rough color sketch and achieve the feeling of the scene without needing to render the whole thing, because you understand where the lighting needs to go and what kind of tone it should have and what color should be there. So I think color is super important that a lot of people leave aside, but color and cinematography to be a visual storyteller.
Yeah. Quite amazing. Where can people find you online?
My Instagram is probably the best place. Art of
Perfect.
Ming. Yeah. I don't know if you have that written out, but I put it. I think I put it. Yeah.
M3.
I think I put it 3.
NG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was cool and I put like a number in there, but I haven't changed it. It's still that.
All right, cool. I can put like a link to it also down
Okay.
below.
It was
Great
nice
chatting
talking
with
to
you.
you.
Appreciate
Yeah.
your time.
Thanks. Take care.